Dr. Gunter,
Hey,
welcome to ASHS.
thank you.
So have you been here since Monday?
I arrived Tuesday morning,
Tuesday morning.
early Tuesday. Yeah.
Awesome. So you joining any presentations or just here to meet people or?
So I think, as chair, a lot of my interactivity is in the hallways,
Yeah.
talking to students, talking to faculty. So it's a lot of out of session activities, but
Mhm.
I did see a number of our um, postdocs and students giving talks, so I'll try to sit in on
Yeah.
as many of those as I can.
Nice.
Yeah, faculty.
Well, I'm sure it's keeping you busy because the University of Florida is
It's a big
it's a
program.
big program.
Very big
Yeah.
program. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so for background, you just mentioned to me you've been chair at University of Florida for 4 years, and before that you were at North Carolina State.
Yes.
And then before that?
Before that, I was a production system specialist in Indiana with Purdue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's my journey.
Yeah. So what got you started in horticulture in the first place?
Well, I don't, it's funny. I didn't come from a farm
Mhm.
background. I was a city kid, suburban kid, I guess. And when I went to Purdue, I didn't know anything about horticulture as an undergraduate, but did some career exploration and found horticulture as a major. Went and talked to, at that time, faculty members were the advisors, and so when I went there to learn about horticulture, I learned from an actual faculty
Mm.
member what the field was about, and immediately knew that that was what I wanted to do. I really wanted to do science, and I wanted to do research and make a difference, and all of those things were described in what this faculty member was telling me, and I knew right away I was hooked.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what were your early research projects like? What did you get started in?
I started like a lot of people. I started in a lab, counting seeds for
Yeah.
graduate students, washing dishes, washing pots. That was a big part of what you do as a kind of like volunteer or um, you know lab helper. And so I did a lot of that, but at the same time, talking to those students about their projects and understanding what graduate school might be like if I really wanted to do research, what do I need to do in order to be successful, and seeing examples of their presentations and their how they translated their hands-on work into the output needed to be a successful graduate student and then ultimately to be a successful future faculty person. All of those things you see by doing, learn kind of by doing. And so that was a really good exposure for me as an undergrad to think, do I really want to do this? Because
Yeah.
it's kind of definitely delayed gratification to go
Mhm.
through the process of, an undergraduate degree and then a graduate degree and learning all the how to do research part. And then from there, standing up a program yourself and trying to be a successful researcher, helping, in my case, vegetable industries in these states that I've been associated with. And so it was that kind of like progression, gradually get more responsibility, do more of your own work and your own research, and then ultimately learn what it takes to be successful in that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So then what kind of specializations did you land on early on, and were there, kind of people that guided you in that path or gave you kind of the inspiration to work on the fields that you ended up working in?
So, like many horticulture undergraduates, I took introduction to horticulture to find
Mhm.
out, what the scope of careers and field is, what it's all about. Um, when when we did that class at Purdue, there was a faculty member who had a lot of experience. He had been there a long time, and he was in charge of teaching undergrads about horticulture. And so we went everywhere, learned, firsthand from farmers, from research station staff, all the things. And when we went to talk to people about vegetables, I was like, okay, this is I was definitely drawn to this. Nothing about the rest of the field and scope of horticulture, but I knew that what I really wanted to do was feed people and help people grow more nutritious food and put food on people's tables who were hungry. And I knew that that was my calling, right from the get go. And so it was a faculty member at that time. He was, had been there a long time, probably close to retirement. And when I fast forward, 25 years in my career, I was sitting next to a faculty from Florida that was, a long retired faculty member in the plant breeding space, but we were chatting about our connections to different universities, and I mentioned Purdue, and he said, "Oh, I also went to Purdue. I did my graduate work there." The the faculty member that was on his graduate committee was the same guy that taught introductory horticulture to me. And I was like, oh, this is such a small world for this guy to have influenced, my career in horticulture, and then to have, prior to that, influenced this breeder's career. And you just realize that we're all connected in this field in some way, helping each other get across that finish line.
Absolutely. I mean, even now, in the conference, I'm always meeting new people. Oh, this person from here, from here, from here.
It's a small world.
Yeah,
and
but
you want everybody to know each other, because that's the way you figure out where you fit. Where do they need your skills? Where do they need your expertise? And if you don't talk to anybody, you never know.
Yeah,
you got to talk to people.
Yeah, that's true. The last person I interviewed this morning mentioned that he comes, or he finds the most important part of the conference to be the hallway sessions.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that. Love seeing the science, but making new connections and meeting people is always really fun.
Yeah, you learn what they're doing, but then you also learn how what might help their research, or what they know might help your research, and that's, I think, you can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah,
Even if it's not today, you're not writing a grant today, but you're thinking about an idea in the future, and you remember, oh, this person I know knows something about that. How do I help them, or how can they help me get this thing across that, grant finish line, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then tell me, after you finished up your graduate work, where did your career take you after that?
Yeah, so I did all my graduate work in Wisconsin, working in potato production and nutrition. And then I went back to Purdue as a production systems specialist there. That was a non-tenured faculty position, but located on a station distant from campus, several hours from campus. So it was right in the heart of Indiana's kind of vegetable growing area in the southwestern part of the state. So got to use some of the experience I learned growing vegetables on sandy soils in Wisconsin, take it down to this other area that happened to have sandy soils, and use some of that nutrition and fertility expertise I gained up there to help those growers. Different vegetables, different vegetable systems, but still, similar problems, weeds and disease and insect management. Understanding kind of the cropping system scope and how to help them remain profitable, grow the best they can.
And then from there,
if you wanna try in academia to be successful in a tenure track position, you've got to apply. You've got to get off the fence and apply.
Yeah.
So, my wife and I decided if we were going to do that, let's go to a place that has a big vegetable production capacity. So NC State happened to have a position open, and working in vegetable cropping systems in a state that, the size of farms is larger, the size of profitability is potentially larger. So we decided to take the jump and pick up stakes and move away from the Midwest to the South, and it was a great place to work. Yeah, the growers there, great. The departmental community was welcoming and supportive, and really wants to help young faculty be successful in their careers. So give you the foundation you need in order to understand, what does success look like? How are you going to get tenure? How are you going to meet growers? How are you going to do the job? Understanding what that looks like was really good.
Yeah, I just had a question come to mind, but I think you kind of answered it, which is, what was the transition like from going from non-tenure track to tenure track at, a well-established university? But it sounds like you had a lot of guidance along the way.
Yeah, lots of help. And I think also understanding what drives programs that are successful in research. So, you need money from external sources. Where are you going to find those sources? How do you craft grants that can attract funders to the problems? I think we all know the problems, but telling that compelling story in a way that allows the funder to see, okay, not only does this person understand the challenge, but they understand how to put together a successful team to solve that challenge. And I think there's a lot of value in talking to faculty who have a lot of experience in that space and letting them review your drafts and let them help you understand, this would hook a reader and tell a compelling story to get the dollars that you need to be successful. So, yeah, and I think I think one of the things that as you advance in your career, helping others to understand that space is really, really helpful, because you want people to be successful. You need them to be successful. Otherwise, there's not enough hands to do all the work. And
Yeah,
so getting people to understand those foundational pieces helps their career, but it also helps them spread the magnitude and impact of the university to others.
absolutely.
That's what we're here for, right? So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
we can't help others, what's the point of being here?
No, precisely. So, and then you spent 14 years at NC State.
I
So
did, yeah.
I imagine, based on your last answer just now, it
Mhm.
was really good to you while
Yeah,
you
oh
were
yeah,
there.
it's a
Yeah.
wonderful department. Yeah, it's a great place to work. I think the state is big in production, not just of vegetables, but fruit, but also um, the administration there is helpful. The department was very helpful place to incubate those career steps. So, we always think about career progression as, you get promoted to associate professor and then you get promoted to full professor, and those sometimes get described as finish lines, but as well as I do, they're never a finish line. It's a place to pause and say, okay, yes, I'm on the right trajectory. Yes, I can build a successful program, and then I can narrow that program focus down to make a real deep impact in some area. Um, we always frame it in, are you making a national impact? Are you making a global impact? And what does that look like? How does what the investment for the state's dollars, the university's dollars, in you as a faculty person translate to success, at the regional, national, global levels? Like, where are you making a difference? And I think that was a great place for me to incubate those things in the career. And then, with the move to the University of Florida, horticultural science, you just can't be in a better place to make a global impact in horticulture. Um, the department is large, covers the entire state of Florida, and the scale of production is immense for Florida. It's
Yeah,
huge.
yeah.
So um, I think if you want to be in a place where people are feeding people, and in that kind of like true food systems approach, where it's food locally, food, regionally, food nationally and internationally, you have to be in a place like Florida
Like
where
that.
it's
Yeah.
where it's really having that global impact.
So, when you're at NC State, what kind of research extension were you working on? And I guess as a follow-up, how did you narrow that down to find what impact you wanted to have and what topics?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I think we think about in faculty positions that we're always chasing dollars. So we're gonna get some money, and if that funding comes through, we're gonna only work on that area, and then we're gonna try again, and we're gonna try again. But I think the truth is, in your professional career, you have a cloud of objectives, and you should be looking for those objectives that are important to the industry or to you as a professional. And then how am I gonna find sources of funding that also align with those objectives? And sometimes that kind of like framing of the idea helps to say, okay, no one grant or one agency is going to fund all of these objectives. They're going to fund something that's aligned closely with one of those. And if I can do that, if I can get a little bit of money, I can make a little bit of impact. If that impact helps the next objective, then I might be able to make a little more impact, and I might be able to make a little more progress. And so at the time when my career started, I was fortunate enough, I guess, to be in a place that had enough critical mass of farmers that wanted food safety extension information. And as an extension specialist, I was able to partner with people in the university that knew about food safety from the commercial side, the manufactured food side, so that I could learn food safety from people who were speaking that language, at least to the manufactured food side, and then kind of try to translate that to what does that look like in a farm, on a
Yeah.
farm. And so, you know, there's a strong culture of food safety excellence at NC State. And so it really helped to talk with people who were extension specialists for dairy, extension specialists for meat production, extension specialists for eggs, and then translate their expertise to the fruit and vegetable farming community and say, okay, this is how we do it in this industry. What makes sense on farms? And so at that time, there was no regulation. It was all good agricultural practices. So it was all voluntary or buyer driven. And so we started with that in mind. How are we going to help farmers understand, just the basics of food safety on farms? Where does contamination come from? How does it enter your farm? How do you look for it? How do you scout properly? How do you train workers to wash their hands? How do you teach food safety culture to your workers? Things like that. And from there, once FSMA, which is the Food Safety Modernization Act, was implemented at the federal level, it wasn't as big of a jump to understand voluntary actions versus now regulatory actions and understanding how that works. I think from that standpoint, doing the next piece of how are we gonna interact with our regulatory partners at the state level and help those folks um, to understand farming systems, the farming community, and work with farmers to implement the regulation on the farm. That was an easier jump than just starting
Yeah,
from zero.
right.
So I think that was helpful. And it was helpful for me because, it opened up avenues of research that focused on food safety. So we did work on water quality for farmers who were using, surface waters, which are high risk for irrigation. And if that's the case, how are they going to understand the risks associated with surface water?
Right.
And so it helped really to jumpstart not just my extension program, but the applied research side of my program to help them really solve then, just like everything else, solve real world problems on farms.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. I mean, um, for some really nerdy academic types like myself, when you're neck deep in literature reviews and other things,
Yeah.
at least personally for me, I'm like, I want to know, what challenges do farmers in the region have? And I'm not an economist, I'm not a sociologist.
Yeah, sure.
It's hard maybe to, figure out what the needs are, but it sounds like, at least in your case, you had people coming to you, which was helpful. And then you also had, not just in horticulture, but these other fields that are able to give you insights into how to solve these challenges.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and also, I was an extension specialist, so understanding that, I'm just one person, but I have a whole network of people who are working across the state, who can tell me what they're seeing as challenges, or put me in front of grower audiences that can then say, okay, here's our challenges in this area of the state, which may be especially for large geographies very different from one end of the state to the other. It's, soil types are different, production challenges might be different. And so getting to meet those agents and then helping the agents to augment their own education so that as my research grows or my extension output grows, not just grower audiences but agent audiences also get trained, because they're embedded in those communities. They see the growers at the grocery store or at the gas station, and so using the network that you have across the state as a specialist really helps. I
yeah,
think you can't see everything, you can't know everything,
yeah,
but some agents who are very experienced have seen, they've seen what's been tried before and didn't work. So you
mm,
learn so much from past failures also. Like, you don't have to waste time on this. You should try something else, try something newer than that, because we've done it and it didn't work, or we've already tried this and it's been successful, so what's next, and in these large production systems, they're complex environments, so there's always a what's next.
Yeah.
Florida's a good example. There's always a new pathogen,
Oh
a
yeah.
new invasive species, a new pest. So it's very dynamic environments, and you have to use that network.
Mhm. I mean, this feels like a theme that's come up in my interviews this morning, like, the importance of marrying, the research with extension. And, I think your story gives a really great example of, the impact it can have in a very direct way, identifying problems, making sure, you're doing more than just I don't know, very cloistered basic research somewhere. So it
Well,
sounds,
there's nothing wrong with, what something that drives academics is usually a passion for research, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think most modern appointments for faculty members have some kind of split between research and teaching, or research and extension, where you can never 100% focus just on your research. But the hope is that the research augments those other program areas, so that if you have the opportunity to make new discoveries, then you're using those discoveries to teach students, or you're using those discoveries to help farmers, and propagate that knowledge the way kind of it should be across all these audiences. Yeah.
so then, sorry, this was a long tangent I led you
No
on,
worries.
but leading kind of now to the I don't want to say you're retiring soon or anything. You're
Yeah.
the capstone of your career now as chair. I think
Is this the end?
I,
What do you know that I don't know, John?
I think it might be a fair characterization. It's a big position in a big program, but what I guess a multi-part question. What can you tell us a bit about your responsibilities, how it's been, and then also kind of in light with what we've been talking about the past few minutes, how are you guiding your program, the faculty there, to have this kind of multi-dimensional engagement with research and teaching and program impacts?
Yeah, so I think, one of the things that I had the opportunity to do when I was at NC State was to learn about leadership, and to have the opportunity to lead in faculty groups and faculty activities. And so from there, I think if you feel called to do that kind of work, some people are very satisfied in their programs to maintain what they're doing, or to continue discovery within the context of their own program. But if you have that call to do something to help others to also be successful, I think that's where department chair activities and things like that's where the pull comes. It's like, well, yes, I can do this and could do it forever. I'm happy to do it forever, but I want you to be able to do it. And I want you to understand what the challenges are going to be in front of you, and how can I help you overcome those as a faculty person or as a student, graduate student. And so I think that was the call to a place like Florida. And of course, you said capstone. I would say, one of the many jewels in the path that's led me to success. The Department of Horticultural Science there at Florida, you can't get a better group of faculty members. The scale at which they're successful, and the impact that they're having, not just regionally or nationally, but really globally. If you want to make an impact in fruit and vegetable production, you have to go to a place that has the capacity to breed fruit and vegetable crops that are overcoming some of those big economic challenges that they have. You have to go to a place that has production specialists that are supportive of all those cropping systems that are across the state. You have to go to a place that has not just conventional production, but organic and food systems production. To go to a place that has, management practitioners that understand farming systems from the weed standpoint, the fertility standpoint, all of the aspects of horticultural production post harvest. How do we keep this now harvested crop on the shelf for as long as possible to get it to consumers that need to eat it. I think that's a place like Florida. There are very few of those places that have that much capacity. And so that's a testament not just to the university for continuing to invest in horticulture, but it's a testament kind of to the state level saying this is an important investment in the future of our state to help fund that. From the university to the state regulatory agencies to the individual faculty programs that are still relevant and tapping into that sort of like theme of how do we make Florida fruit and vegetable production successful. And I think that's, that's the testament that drew me. Those were the stories that drew me to Florida.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So then maybe changing tack a little bit, what's your experience been in ASHS, and what role has ASHS played for you in, the whole path of your career from, helping with regional issues to leading others in, the academic community to have their own success in such a big production environment like Florida?
Yeah. Well, as you know, I've just been elected as the incoming president-elect for the society. So like I think there's no mystery that I'm fully invested in in ASHS. But I think one of the things that when I was thinking about running as president-elect, I was like, oh, I've been a member of this society for 30 years. Like I must have started as a child, right? Like toddler. But I think when I look back at the influence that it's had, from the time I was a graduate student, just sort of starting to present my work to other people to look at besides my lab group. ASHS is the place where you meet those future colleagues across the nation. You meet, your future bosses across the nation. You really have the opportunity in an organization like this that's small enough but has this international scope to get connected to others who are working in this space, and it's horticulture writ large, not just fruit and vegetable crops, but ornamentals and all of the rest of the production systems that are represented here. So I think the good part is talking to other people who are working in the same area as you, or watching talks, talking to people who are in different areas, because that sometimes sparks your imagination that maybe tomorrow can help you solve a problem that you have because you were inspired by their work. And I think there's value add in both of those. We like to think I'm here to just watch all the talks on vegetables, but the truth is, if you start walking through the poster session, you get inspired not just in the work that someone's doing, but the creativity of putting together a beautiful poster. And how am I gonna, how could I take some of those ideas and make my next presentation better, or listening to speakers who are good at what they do, and how can I absorb some of that to make my next talk better. Learning teaching methodology in the teaching section, and understanding what is pedagogy, and how do I use that as a TA in my class, and then as a new instructor, how do I stand up good teaching skills and assessment and understanding all those things? Because when we're in graduate school, we don't necessarily learn about teaching or about how to run a lab, or about you sort of learn by watching. But in these places, you get to talk to people who have done that and say, I'm having this problem. How did you figure this out? And sometimes that can be the best thing you take away from the meeting. Plus, you meet lifelong friends here. There are colleagues that I only see them when I'm at ASHS, because we don't work in the same area of horticulture, but we all come to the meeting. It's like, oh, I've been seeing you. How's your family? How are your pets? How are how are the people that you care about? And learning those things and catching up. That's some of the best parts of the meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still very early on in my career here, but again, kind of like you said, there's certain friends and I only see them here, but it's really great to see their careers, their families and everything change and grow, once a year. And also, like you said, I take a lot of pictures of slides and posters, not
Oh,
because
yeah.
of the content,
Oh,
but
yeah.
because of the nice,
Sometimes it's
yeah,
good, sometimes
designs.
it's bad.
No, I've done that too. Like,
Yeah.
don't do this.
Yep. Yeah.
I also want to add on that too. Finding new opportunities for ways to get involved,
Mhm.
grants, agency. There's a lot to
Yeah.
be gained from attendance, which kind of leads me to a follow-up question, which is that as you described, there's so much value to be taken from different places and in different ways from attending the conference. Is there anything in particular that you feel like maybe students or young faculty aren't taking enough advantage of in either just their engagement and membership in ASHS or specifically here at the conferences?
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things I would encourage anyone who's coming to the for the first time or hasn't participated much is to participate in the professional interest groups.
Mhm.
Engage in those working groups because the cost of entry is zero, right? You just have to show up at the time when the meeting is. And in those meetings, two important things happen. You learn who's working in this area besides you, so you are not alone, right? And you also have the opportunity to stand up and say, if this group needs a secretary to take notes, I will do that. If this group needs a chair-elect to lead the meeting next year, I will do that. And the activation energy for those things is so low that it's a very good way to put yourself out there, volunteer, and take action to be part of what makes the society successful. We like to think of the society as this big meeting and it's, all of these scientific sessions, but the truth is the society is just us. And all of the rest of the hotel venue and all of the poster setup and all the things you see are just there to help us connect with each other. And if you are new to the society and you haven't done that yet, you're missing the most important thing. We started this conversation talking about hallway conversations. Besides learning about the science or giving a presentation about your science, those conversations that we have, whether they're in the back of the room or whether they're with a speaker at the end of their talk, or if someone asks you a question, those are the most important times in the whole meeting. We like to think the most important times are the awards or this, plenary session or whatever. But really, it's you connecting with others at the meeting that's the most important thing. So volunteer opportunities are plentiful. Find an affinity group that sounds like it would be fun and show up at their business meeting or show up at their working group session. And then when they say, hey, we need a volunteer to plan next year's talks, is there anybody who's willing? Raise your hand, because I learned early on from a more experienced faculty member, when you organize a workshop, you get to pick the speakers and you get to pick people who you want to hear them speak, right? So
Yeah.
you get the best of both worlds. You get to choose the speakers and you get to invite them and hear exactly what you want to hear
Yeah.
from their research programs. So it's a really easy activity. You just have to be organized and help them stay on track. And once you're there, you get to listen to the best talks in the whole meeting because you decided who gets to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
That never happens, right? So yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, this has been really insightful. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to wrap up
Absolutely.
with just a couple more
Sure.
questions. Earlier, I misspoke by saying capstone. You corrected me,
Yeah,
jewels in the
sure.
crown.
Yeah, absolutely.
What what are some of your personal favorite highlights from your experience working in horticulture?
I
Where,
think the best things we do are teach students. Like if I look back at my career, I met a student here who I taught 6 years ago, vegetable production to. That student is now a working professional in horticulture. They don't work in veggies, but they work in this field. And what a joy to have that person come up and say, I remember your class. I enjoyed your class. I really learned a lot from your class. It just feels like the most rewarding experience. If you propagate that across growers coming to you at meetings and saying, you really helped me, you really saved me money or saved me from making a bad decision. I can't think of anything more rewarding than someone saying to you, you really made a difference in my life. And I think if I can do that, that's the best part of my career. I love research, but research with that direction of helping somebody else, teaching with that direction of helping someone's career, that's the most rewarding part of my job, for sure.
Sounds excellent.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, then wrapping up then, what do you look forward to for the future of horticulture, the students you teach, for the society?
Yeah.
What's down the pike that you think holds a lot of promise?
Yeah. So I think, we in this day we're very worried about all the things that are happening with federal funding and all of the uncertainty that we're seeing at that level. And faculty members come and ask me what's the future going to look like. And I think one of the best parts about being a leader in these times is reminding people of why they chose these jobs. The best way to be successful, the best way to remain relevant is understand your job and do your job. Just keep your head down, keep working, because we know that horticulture is always going to be relevant. We know that fruit and vegetable production is going to remain a staple of this economy, a staple of the states in which we work. And so helping people to remind them that, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. There's been uncertainty in the past and we made it, and it's going to happen again and we'll make it again. But it's because we are doing things that are relevant to people that this field, horticulture, is not going to go away. There may be rocky economic times, there may be uncertainty for funding, but it's not because what we're doing is irrelevant. I think the calmer heads will prevail and show those folks that control the dollars that yes, we still need these research activities to happen. We still need this information because at the end of the day, people still got to eat. They got to eat 3 times a day, and
it can't just be corn and maize.
it can't just be. Well, I mean that that even those growers are uncertain about the future. But I think when you talk about things like strategic importance of what people do, food production is strategically important, and it's always going to be. When we talk about sustainability is always important, and it's always going to be, because at the end of the day, if fruit and vegetable growers or nursery people or cut flower people are not sustainable, they aren't going to make it economically. And so we know that those fields are relevant, and they're always going to need research-based information to make decisions. So ultimately, they will push the needle forward to make sure that this data still keeps coming and it still remains relevant. And I think that's why we're always going to have jobs. We're always going to have people who have to do this kind of work, because ultimately it's important.
Well, I think that kind of attitude makes you the right man for the job of president.
So
at this time.
I'm sure you'll hear me say it 100 times over the next year or two. So yeah, for sure.
Well, Dr. Gunter, thank you so much. This was a very wonderful, insightful interview. So
thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.